Everything you know about money is probably wrong and it's holding you back. Tune in today so we can straighten you all out.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
We're going to do some straightening today.
Well, here's the thing, Bo. You have to guard what you let in your brain.
Oh, yeah, I'll agree with that.
There's a reason I don't. When I was a teenager, and this is still because I see all these Saw movies and people saw and this creepy stuff.
No way.
When I was a teenager, horror movies, we had Freddy Krueger and all that, and I watched all that stuff. But here's what I realized: things I was letting in my brain, I couldn't get out of my brain. They were causing me where I couldn't sleep. So I'm not so sure. This is the true point with how it impacts your wallet. I'm not so sure all this information that we have out there, everybody right now agrees we have access to more information than any other generation in America, in the world,
yeah.
any time that humans have been on this planet. I'm not sure the 24-hour information cycle has made us better decision makers.
And if I'm hearing you right, the fact that stuff comes in but we can't get it out, there's actually a chance that it's even made us worse decision makers because of that, right?
For sure. Now, it's great when you get those brain worms where you're trying to figure out the actor in that obscure movie from 15 years. You can pull out your phone and you can Google it. But does it help you overcome the following things? Does it help you from not selling your 401k just because the market's having some crazy volatility?
Quite the opposite. I bet on any given day you could go find an article that says now is the time to sell no matter what day it is.
Yeah, because and we're going to talk about those blind spots. Don't you worry. We're going to let you know why those guys are telling you that stuff. Does it keep you from becoming depressed because you didn't get enough likes or you don't get enough interaction from people on social media? Or maybe somebody down the street, you're like, wow, their life just is so much better than mine. Is it keeping you protected from that? How about the anger you have? This is a big one from right now. Remember, we don't talk about politics, religion on this show because right now we live in a time where one group of people hates a whole nother group of people and they never met those people.
Just because.
Because of how they vote or some other crazy thing. Even though if you met these people in a bar and you didn't know how they voted or you probably get along with him swimmingly well, but all this information has got us just swimming in bad thoughts. And then how about the loss of sleep because of this week's news cycle and the conjured up crisis that they said that this has never happened, and if we don't fix this, oh my God. I mean, this really is the
always
news cycle
on the horizon
right now. You have to build foundational knowledge and make sure you educate yourself so you can inoculate yourself from all the noises out there. Because I will tell you, you need to know the difference between what is actionable and good information to have and what is the minutia and the noise that's going to sidetrack you from making horrible decisions with your money, with your relationships, just honestly make you a sourpuss where you're just not a fun person to be around. So we want to kind of help you with that. The big thing I want to share, here's a few basic influencers or whisperers that are changing and shaping the type of person you are. So let's kind of jump into this inner voice shapers that are out there. The first one, the media. The media, now I feel like we have to set the table. How do they get paid, Bo?
They don't get paid for sharing relevant information or even for sharing accurate information. They get paid for getting eyeballs on the thing that is they want eyeballs on, because ultimately they want advertisers to pay them for showing their advertisements.
So advertising, do you think it's inspirational? No. More eyes hit, their sledgehammer is fear and anxiety. I mean, if they can scare the heebie-jeebies out of you, it's going to get more eyeballs on their story. So you need to understand that the media does not care about you. They care about your eyeballs.
That's right.
They want to know that you're looking at their stuff, not worried about how well you're sleeping at night. I can assure you of that. The whole thing, if it bleeds, it leads. There's a reason that is a term within news cycles. I didn't make that up, by the way.
I've never even heard that. Didn't even know that was a thing.
Go Google it and you'll see this is something news media uses. If it bleeds, it leads. They want to put that scare the heck out of you. That's their sledgehammer. social media. How do people on social media, influencers and others, how do they get paid, Bo?
They want clicks, they want page views, they want viewers, they want readers, they want subscribers.
That sounds a lot like the media.
So it's all
So
like
wait a
a
minute.
social version
Now
of that.
realize we're on social media. So we I will tell you, we get paid based upon how many of you watch our YouTube channel.
Yep, it's
we
true.
get clicks from it. So, what makes us different is that hopefully you can tell we're just kind of wired a little different. We could make more money. And this is something I want to tell you. Have you ever noticed on YouTube, why are a lot of the thumbnails, why is clothing optional?
Lot of skin
Have
in-
you noticed how many thumbnails appeal to? They have ladies and sometimes they have men that just clothes just didn't seem to be around when they were setting up those thumbnails. What happened? I don't know what happened. They're trying to get your clicks.
So one of the things we'd actually talked about, we floated this out of the team, is that we were going to do some pictures of Brian and I, just topless in swim trunks,
don't
and
tell
make
them
that
that.
our clip art to see if it went viral.
Now, y'all know.
The team voted it down. It was ridiculous, but I thought it was a great
Flex
idea.
McGee over here would actually like that. Mid 40-year-old Brian who's just trying to keep the old flabbiness, under control. We'll just, I don't want to put any mental pictures in your head, but just know that there's something going on. And then your friends. Here's the thing about social media. I don't think people give you their true self on social media. They give you the best version of themselves. And, just because you don't have as many clicks or how many friends, I don't think you should let that shape your mind.
Social
completely.
media is totally a highlight reel because we put the things up there that are the pretty things and the happy things and the good things. It's not the real reel, it's the highlight reel.
If it's the highlight reel, it's the airbrush highlight reel.
Oh,
now
yeah,
realize my
yeah.
wife, right out of college, she came out of college with a digital animation degree. But, in Georgia, there was not a lot of animation studios. So her job right out of college was making swimsuit models and underwear models look better by digitally taking off the things that we all see. So everything you see out there in social media, because my wife, by the way, she took a picture this weekend. We had my mother-in-law's 80th birthday party, and she took this picture, and she goes, Mom was all stressed out because she didn't have makeup on when we took the picture. she goes, I just put some makeup on her she has
Just
some
right there
app.
on her cell
She
phone.
had some app
Yeah.
that nothing is real out there in social media. So don't let that stuff influence you. Now, next one is going to break your heart because it broke mine. Another whisper in your ear that probably is wrong. Your parents.
Oh, you can't say that. You can't say that.
And family. I'll throw family on there too. I grew up, I had a great childhood. I had two loving parents, stayed married, both gainfully employed, pretty much my whole time, except for, I will say, my dad lost his job when I was it was the end of middle school, first of high school, and that kind of shaped me to where I wanted to be my own man and be self-employed because I watched a company fire him after he'd been there for like 23 years.
Right.
Devastating. But here's something that I caught on as I've become more knowledgeable and understand. My parents told several things to me that I found out have not been true financially. They told me wealthy people don't pay taxes. I did tax returns for 16 years as a tax preparer, as a CPA, and then sold my tax business. And now as I've had more success, I will tell you, wealthy people pay lots of taxes. Now, there is a difference. I will tell you, if you make your income from capital transactions, meaning that you're doing like real estate, if you're doing investing, that's how the Warren Buffetts out there can say that their tax rate is lower than their receptionists, is because capital investments, that's after-tax money already when it gets invested, it is taxed differently. But for all of us that are doing services or getting wages, you are paying a lot of taxes if you have a big W-2 or if you have big service income. You pay lots of taxes. The other thing that my parents, they always, and it was kind of a whisper thing, is that if somebody was super successful, it was probably at somebody else's expense.
But they took advantage of someone to get there.
And I know, now that I've gotten older, I know that some of that, look, I'm not talking bad about it, because I think a lot of you guys probably resemble the childhood I had, is that my parents are not bad people. If this was a coping mechanism. It's the same reason people watch The Bachelorette or they watch The Bachelor. They like to see dysfunction on somebody else so they feel better about who they are.
Yeah.
It's the same way with your finances. If you know that you're not successful or wealthy and you see somebody over here who is, usually it's not your fault. It has to be some other third, some force that's working against you that's causing that. So this is the stuff that, and it's also your parents, if you were raised in a household, and if they're Republicans or if they're Democrats, there's a good chance you probably see your worldview in their
Based
same
on that
eyes.
influence, yeah.
And it's all your childhood that influence these things. So you have to be careful how much that stuff gets in your head.
And a lot of times it's not that, like you said, your parents aren't bad people, but a lot of times if your parents didn't know or have good financial habits or financial decisions, how are they going to teach something they didn't know? Because even some good habits can be less than ideal habits. One of your favorite stories that I hear you tell all the time, Brian, is that your parents were fantastic savers. They did a great job of living on
wads. I mean, my parents had the tight wad. If you ever see anybody that takes soap shards, melts them down to make bars of soap, tight wad. I grew up in that type of household.
But so they got the hard part down, the deferred gratification down. The part they didn't get down was how to employ that army of dollar bills to really work hard for
I've often said
them.
that my parents had the hardest part of becoming financially independent down. They were great with the resource of money. The problem was they never put that army of dollar bills to work. My father-in-law, I don't think my in-laws saved as well as my parents, but my in-laws invested in mutual funds early and often, and they had more money because of that. So you're exactly right. My parents just did not know how to make the most of the money.
Right.
And that's a habit. Fortunately, and I can tell you, when I went to college and I was an accounting major, I didn't know anything. I had never done a tax return. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble here. So you're right. If you don't have somebody in the household modeling good financial behavior, you don't know what you're missing. Thank goodness there's resources like this. So let's fast forward and let's kind of talk about if we talked about these things that are whispering in your ear, what's the biases and the blind spots that you're probably even unaware of that is influencing. And if you can understand these things, you will instantly become a better decision maker. So here's some of the things that could influence your worldview as well as how you're making decisions. The first one is, what part of the country are you from?
Yeah, this one is this is an easy one for me to grasp. We're from the South, right? And here's a really easy example that I think about. You and I went to Denver a couple months ago in the wintertime. We went and spoke to a large organization. And when we got off the plane, we were like, oh my goodness, we're going to be stuck. There is snow and ice all over the roads. We're not going to get anywhere. We called Uber. The Uber driver showed up, but he was just zipping around like it was a sunny day.
85, and there's like, this much snow on the ground, and he's driving 85 miles per hour. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to die.
And we would recognize just because of where we grew up, where we're from, what we're used to, we had a different worldview on what was appropriate driving, and it was totally normal. But because of that bias, we were just off in that setting.
Well, I want to throw one out because this is for all of my Southern friends out there. And I want you to think about your news programs. When you watch your nightly news, the only people you will see on TV from the South is if they were like, they're a comedian or they were like an athlete that now has crossed over and is on Good Morning America or something like that. But they never went to like journalism school and became like the lead anchor, because there is a huge bias from a lot of the media towards people in the South. They think because we talk a little slower, have a little bit of draw, oh, bless their heart, those guys just must not be that smart down there. That's just not the way it works. But there's biases. I don't even know if they know that they're discriminating, but you will not see on the nightly news somebody from the South unless their personality. Think about like Dave Ramsey's from the South. But did Dave Ramsey get his big break? No, he went out there and pushed.
That's right.
And I think eventually they just can't ignore you anymore. And we're kind of hoping for that ourselves, but it's not like somebody's choosing you and going, man, I like that draw that those boys have. They just don't do that. So I've mentioned this one. I'll mention it again. how your parents voted growing up has a lot of influence on your blind spots and biases.
Yeah, and I think it's even interesting. Even like I grew up in a house where they were not politically active at all, and so what my parents did is they just knew which letter ticket to go ask for. They'd ask for that ticket, and then they would just vote down the line for that letter.
Vote a straight ticket.
They didn't know anything about what the candidates were or what they stood for, and so I just assumed that was the way that you approach elections.
Yeah, and a lot of these things can, by the way, integrate. Which part of the country you're from, how you vote, those things might be integrated. And you just don't even realize these bias or blind spots are out there. How much, where did you go to college, or how much education did you receive? That stuff influences how much you think about things and your, and your blind spots. And where did you go to college? It's amazing, versus if it's part of the country or if it's a small university versus a local community college. All that stuff is going to shape how you look at this world.
I think that one is so transformative because we've seen this thing happen. Two siblings who grow up in the exact same household, exact same background, exact same family, exact same values, go to two different universities, two different types of universities, and it's amazing how different those two individuals become because of that influence. You have to know that those are the things that are whispering in your ear, those are the things that are influencing you.
Well, here's one. This is point I don't think people think of. When did you graduate college? I make this point all the time. I graduated in the mid-90s. So rock and roll. I mean, the market was booming in the 90s. I mean, this was the years where like 96, 97, 98. I mean, if you weren't making 40 to 50% in your investments, you're doing it wrong. I mean, it was just crazy town on how much you can make. So I still carry some of that optimism about what rates of return should be. You came out in the mid-2000s.
That's right.
You think, oh my goodness, the sky is falling anytime now. This thing's going to zero.
Every year that we make it through a year and we didn't lose 10 to 20% is like a good year, right? That's kind of what I was used to.
And then here's some life things that happen I think influence you. And I'll tell you, I fall into some of this is, were you bullied, jilted, or is there some point in your life that you really had something that shook you up? That stuff influences you more than you realize.
Yeah, that's this could be something where you had a big breakup. That relationship that you just knew was going to be the one that was going to be the one, and something changed, and that made you change the way you looked at how you interact with people or how vulnerable you made yourself. Or maybe you had career aspirations or athletic aspirations or whatever, and it didn't happen. That influences the way that you see the world, the way that you interact with the world around you.
And then I thought this is one that I carry. Were you the victim of a crime at some point in your life? I mean, I will tell you, my parents, when we were moving to the house they built when I was 5 and 6 years old, we lived in an apartment for about 6 months. It was not in a good part of town. Mm-hmm. We were broken into. I was beaten up. I had my bike stolen from me. It's not like I left the bike out.
Right.
I had somebody come beat me up, take the bike from me on the spot. And then to add on that, within the month, we also had our place broken into. A lot of my parents' jewelry was stolen. We had all the TVs, which back then that was actually a big deal.
Yeah.
All that stuff. I still, we had some things happen where inappropriate stuff was going on with somebody's email was hacked. Mm-hmm. That stuff, you realize if you've ever been robbed or broken, you carry some things that you didn't even realize you were carrying around in you. That stuff shapes you and is a bias. If you don't understand all these things that make you who you are, you got to get this stuff under control. You got to know where your weaknesses are, so you make sure it doesn't ruin your potential, because we're all quirky. I will go ahead, I'm going to ruin a portion of this show. I have yet to meet a person that after you know them for at least 2 to 3 years, they're not a weirdo. Every one of us is a weirdo.
You've known me for like decades.
You're a weirdo too.
Oh, he's wrong.
You are
a
weirdo. I mean, everyone. I'm not going to say on air what I know your weirdo habits are, but we all have weirdo habits, and you know mine. I mean, everyone. If you hang out with me, everybody who I go on guy trips or I go on golf trips, they know I have some weirdo habits. I mean, I do a good job of hiding my weirdo. I'm a weirdo. So it's just, I'm telling you, everybody out there, and you become a weirdo because all the weird things that have happened to you and shaped you in your life. So this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And everybody else that you think is brilliant, awesome, and is non-weirdo is weirdo too. Because I meet people all the time, and I have a good weirdo meter. I can spot that we all have some weird stuff going on. You just have to know what you can do to cope and function through that and overcome it. So let's kind of talk about a few of those things as well, so you can become that empire builder that we want you to be.
So step 1 is recognizing and understanding your biases. Step 2 is understanding how to pave a path forward.
That is exactly right. So here's the first one. Now that you understand where your weirdo lies, or was it Miranda Lambert when she talks about hide your crazy?
Hide your crazy, yep.
Once you understand these things, you first have to work on that mind in your head. I will tell you, my wife and I, after we've been married 7-8 years, we started having some communication issues. And we went and saw somebody. She's going to kill me. Thank God she doesn't listen to any of this stuff. But we went and talked to somebody, and the person fixed me a lot. Now, she fixed her too, but she fixed me. And the fact that my biggest problem in the marriage is I have this thing called an inner voice.
Yeah, yep.
That sometimes he's a jerk.
He's negative,
and, he's negative, and he doesn't say things right. He doesn't think about things right. He doesn't paint with a glass half full. He paints with a glass half empty. This is the stuff that makes you a weirdo. But I want to tell you, if you can control that inner voice, and the first thing you need to tell that inner voice is, don't be a victim.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many people. I feel like it is now a game in society, is that how is the system working against me, and how can I blame the system for my shortcomings?
Yep.
We all stink at something.
Yep.
And we all have facets to our life that we're not good at. You can find a reason to blame it. It's always someone else's fault. Right. And you can also, there's a lot of people out there that will use their own insecurity to tell you why the system's working against you. And you can hear their voice and be like, and grab onto it and be like, yeah, that's right. That whole group of people is working against us. I'll never be able to be successful because the system's working against me.
That's right.
It is hooey. It really is. I mean, I could say a lot more. Malarkey. We could say things that are not cuss words so we keep our explicit lyric status clear, but it's hooey to you to stay away from that. And there's a great YouTube video because a lot of you are looking for your big break. And I'm not going to disagree that luck, there is luck and talent meets, and that's your big break and your opportunity. It really is at the intersection of your talents meeting up with that lucky moment or that big break moment and you making the most out of it. But the problem is you're never going to have your big break if you're sitting on the couch. You've actually got to go walk down to the intersection where Big Break is hanging out so you two can actually cross paths.
That's right.
And you can have that moment. And there's a great YouTube video that's going to make you laugh your rear end off, and it's Will Smith.
Now, it has some choice language, so just kind of know that there's a little bit of salty language in there.
He can't say that his doesn't have explicit lyrics in it. And by the way, Will Smith is not a cusser.
No, he's not.
I mean, he has made a whole career off of rapping without a lot of cuss words in it, so good for him for doing that. But there are some cuss words in this one, but it's the title, if you go on YouTube, and we might put a link, I don't know if Morpheus will link to it or not, but if you go and search for How I Became the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, it's spectacular.
And essentially what it's walking through is what he actually did, because you might think that, Will Smith has always been Will Smith. He's always been the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That's not exactly the case. There was actually some fortuitous events that took place that allowed that to happen.
Well, if y'all remember, I'm old enough that when Will Smith had his big break is that he did Parents Just Don't Understand. And that was a big success. And then he had some other things that came out from it. But then Will made some horrible decisions. He had his second album come out with DJ Jazzy Jeff, and it was a flop. It was a dud. It didn't go platinum. He said it went plastic, and they essentially threw it away. And the thing is, he said that he didn't, it's not like he tried to avoid paying his taxes, but one day he got a notice from the IRS, and he was like, oh man, they're going to need their money.
I guess they need their money.
He says it in a much funnier way. He's like, oh man, I guess they need their money. And, and he right then and there, I think Will Smith could have played the victim card and said that the man was working against him, because he what I loved is he said being famous and broke, and he used a different word, but it's crappy. It's not a good situation to be in, because he goes, you're still famous, people still recognize you. The problem is they recognize you while they're sitting next to you on the city bus. And that probably is a great mental thing, thinking about that. But then he said this is what got him his successful break, because I think The Fresh Prince probably was the big break that got him back on where his recording career took off. Then he got the movie career and all the other great things that happened for Will Smith's awesome career. Is that his girlfriend told him, You got to go hang out where the action's happening.
Yeah.
Get off the couch and go make something happen.
She told him, she must have known the Money Guy show was coming. She said, don't be a victim. Go out there and create some opportunity.
So Will Smith, where his girlfriend told him to go hang out, because he says, where is opportunity right now? And she goes, the Arsenio Hall show. So Will says he went down to the Arsenio Hall show, started hanging out down there, and that's where he actually met Quincy Jones.
Yep.
And Quincy Jones was his big break because big executive producer that worked behind the scenes to make the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air happen. And the rest is history. But it's one of those things where people see Will Smith and they see somebody who's super successful, married to a beautiful woman, all the trappings of all the things of being successful, and they don't see that story of somebody who had some actual shortcomings and other things. And if he would have let his voice just say, we're not going to be the success story, he could have just been the victim, played the victim, and the rest of the story would have been done and nobody would have blamed him for it.
And even when you go watch the video, it's fantastic because it talks about he's put in an uncomfortable position where he has to do something, and he has this thought where, okay, I can either not do this or I can go through this uncomfortable thing that I have to do. And the fact that he did that is what cemented his spot as the Fresh Prince. And me and you talked about this, Brian. Every one of us, no matter how successful, probably at some point had to do something uncomfortable, get out of our comfort zone to set us up for that success.
I don't think it's probably. I think everybody who's successful had to do something. Now, that something doesn't mean they went and crooked somebody, because that's easy for us all to cope. It means they did something that put them outside their comfort zone. I can tell you, two big things that happened for me that I look back and I go, was I crazy when I did that? Was I left a perfectly good paying job that I was making close to six figures at to go start my first company in 2002.
With how many clients? One.
It was kind of not a well thought executed plan. And then the second thing was that I started a podcast in 2006. Nobody, you want to talk about weirdo? Who starts a podcast in 2006? It's just weirdo. You are the kid that people, my wife, if you want to know how weird it is, my poor, beautiful wife had to go talk to all my guy friends and say, please don't bust him up too much. I know it's weird, but he's really excited about this. Don't bust him up too much, because guys are mean to each other.
Yeah.
God bless her for doing that, because it was weird, but I did something uncomfortable and it turned out to be really successful. And
life-changing.
I mean, it really did. It changed our entire life. So that's one thing, is you got to not be the victim. So let's talk about next, how do you turn that frown upside down and become an optimist? If you're not an optimist, you're probably betting against yourself, and that is not where you need to be. Now, here's something. I'm always surprised when we talk about, like, there's a big correlations between losing weight and then building wealth. It's because it's so simple. We make it complicated. Human nature is we make these things complicated by trying to create systems, create better mousetraps, but they're not. It's very simple. You know, to have more money is either you have to spend less, save more. It's the same thing with weight loss. If you don't have a medical condition, is you got to either exercise more
or eat better,
or you got to eat less. Well, and there's all these research studies that come out from time to time and say how much weight you lose while you're sleeping. And people are like, huh? I lose weight while I'm sleeping? Well, of course you do, because your
body's still working.
It's still working. Well, guess what? There's another part of you that's working while you're sleeping. It's your brain. So if you can get your brain right on the front end, that's why if you don't understand the biases, if you can understand all the people that have whispered in your ear over the years, all the things you need to be doing, and you don't even understand it, if you can wake up that brain to understand, I call it the invisible hand. You know, Adam Smith was not the only one with Wealth of Nations talking about the invisible hand. Your brain has an invisible hand too. If you can recognize where you want to be and become that eternal optimist, your brain will start making things happen. It's almost, I know it sounds really weird and kooky, but I'm telling you, at night, your brain will be working to make that vision line up. And here's what you need to do to make that happen. I want you to write down your goals for this year, your goals for the next 3 years, and your goals for the long term, which are 5 years and greater.
Now, some of you guys are, maybe you're watching this at work and you kind of have us on one of your screens, or maybe you're on the treadmill or on the lawnmower, and you're like, okay, I'm going to think about those things. No. We didn't say think about those goals.
I want you to write it down.
Go get a pen and a piece of paper and actually force your hand to write what your short, intermediate, and long-term goals are.
That dream becomes a goal that's measurable once it's written down, and that also wakes up that invisible hand. There's your brain and your mental capacity starting to figure out how we can make this thing happen. You also have to establish some support structures, some tools that will affirm and keep you focused and engaged. On the personal side, because this is not all about money. I want you to be successful personally too. Make sure that you're figuring out what makes me happy, what makes me fulfilled might be different than both.
Yep.
It might be different than what a lot of the staff and employees here at Abound Wealth are like. You have to, it's individualized for everybody. So you have to figure out very early, what are the things that drive you? For me, I always want to be a school teacher. This is my outlet. This thing gives me so much rocket fuel. So be deliberate, figure it out, and do what God put you on this earth to do, and you will be much happier. From a relationship standpoint, go ahead and structure some support things so that you don't take relationships for granted. You need to figure out date nights.
And this isn't just like, oh, if you're a single guy, go figure, or a single girl, go figure out how to have date nights. This is, if you've been married for 25 years, find a way to continue to date your spouse and be very intentional about setting those times aside where you can reconnect on that relational level.
Set up some time to do a date night or just a writing down a list of travel destinations. Have some discussions, some goals. Have a goal for selfless acts of things you want to do for loved ones. It doesn't have to just be your spouse. It could be the kids. It could be your parents.
Siblings.
Just do something that lets you know. And then I think for financial side, you got to have some accountability tools like an annual net worth statement. If you're not tracking your annual net worth, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to really push that invisible hand and wake up what's going on. And I also have a measurement tool to know how much is actually occurring for you.
Yeah, that made me think, Brian. We have one of our friends up here, Michael High. He's in the office up here with us, and he has this great thought around limiting beliefs and liberating truths. That inner voice in our head. If you can start thinking about how to identify the limiting beliefs that you have and turn those into actionable items, it's amazing. Just like you said, when you go to sleep at night, your brain will begin believing those things, and you'll wake up the next day and you'll actually be actionable, moving in that direction.
And you said actionable things. That leads to my next point, just do it. That's not only a great tagline and slogan for Nike. There's a reason that Nike kept that around for so long, is because there is a great condition within human nature is that we just let life happen.
Yep.
It just happens. I mean, one day you wake up and you go, wow, I'm 10 years older. What did I accomplish over the last decade? Nike came out with a slogan, said, just do it. And I think you kind of have to grab that mantra and do that for your own financial life as well, is because you got to, look, there's not a single goal that doesn't turn into something big and fulfilling that you don't look back on and go, how the heck did I get here? I will tell you, if I look at us in this YouTube channel and I look at all the multiple cameras that we have going on here and all the other stuff, I'm like, how do you do that? It would never, the guy in 2006 couldn't have done that. You have to start with baby little steps. And so you avoid that analysis paralysis that will totally destroy what's going on in your financial life.
You can't do step number 8, 9, 10 unless you've done step 1, step 2, step 3. And you need to start somewhere. There's like a saying that it's much easier to steer a ship that's in motion than a ship that's still. Maybe that's not actually a saying, but that's a true thing. It's hard to get something moving from a dead standstill. If you can at least start moving in that direction, it's amazing how much more successful
the momentum
you can be.
Definitely builds. And that's why I can tell you, I look back at my life. It's one of the things about getting older is that you can look back on your life and try to glean some wisdom of what, because one of our clients says one of the greatest things. He says, you'll never know when you've worked your best day.
That's right. Yep.
And it's a true statement. You don't know what one act you'll do that's going to change your life forever. But I can, when you get a little age under you and you start having a little success, I can look and see 3 steps, 3 little small actions I took that have had huge consequences in my life. The first one, I went from being a finance major at the University of Georgia to an accounting major.
Okay.
There's a lot of reasons that I should have never done that. I shared with you guys, I don't come from a background with anybody who comes from a financial background. My parents believed CDs were your best investment. And when you get into an accounting program at Georgia, by the way, they had a weeder class where they kicked people out. They also, I will tell you, this is the craziest thing. The majority of the kids that were in the accounting program had parents or relatives that already worked in the financial field.
Yeah,
so it
I
was
can believe
very intimidating when we got to like the tax project where they're all just going to mom and dad's accounting firms and running it through the tax software. And then Brian's over there with his calculator and trying to, I was like, I am going to be a failure at this. I could have played a victim very easily and be like, well, I guess I just don't have the background. This is for only those rich kids that come from a financial background. No, I could have been a limiting belief that didn't let that happen. So just changing from finance to accounting opened up some tremendous opportunities for me. Here's the other one. When I went for my second interview, because accounting firms started coming to the University of Georgia and interviewing. Had my first interview with an accounting firm up in Marietta, Georgia, and the partner saw where I was from, and he says, hey, we represent a hardware store that's in your hometown. And I was like, oh, I know that hardware store. I immediately thought when I heard that, I was like, dadgummit, why did I quit Boy Scouts? Because the guy who owned that hardware store was the scoutmaster for the Boy Scouts locally. And Brian being a wimpy weirdo, as I've told you, I don't like sleeping outside. Straight up, one of the first things you'll find out, if you want to go hiking or camp, I like hiking. If you want to go camping, Brian's not your huckleberry.
I think it's called glamping is what you like to do.
I like to stay in a hotel room. Better yet, I like staying in my own bed.
Fair enough.
But it's one of those things where it's just not me. So I was worried because here's what I did. I got my first job. They told me this years after I started working at this firm. The only reason they hired me is they were so impressed that I went and interviewed one of their clients. And that client was the hardware store owner. I could have stayed away from him because I knew he didn't love me back at that time because I was the kid that quit Boy Scouts. I was the wimpy kid that quit, but I still got in my uncomfortable zone, went and interviewed him. That got me my first job at a public accounting firm because I wasn't I was a good student, but I wasn't what I call a front row sitter. So it was one of those things. And then the third thing was that podcast. Not caring just starting that podcast set in the chain reaction of all this other stuff where we now have a studio, which is unbelievable.
And by the way, when you started the podcast, it wasn't like we have the hundreds of thousands of folks that listen now. It was screaming into a void of nothing, right? It was just
with
doing
horrible
this.
equipment.
Yeah.
With horrible equipment that sounds. You can go still listen to that 2006 episode. If you go to moneyguy.com, go check out our archives. It's out there. So that's some of the things you got to just do it, get the process going. Let me go ahead and give you some other tools that will help you just do it and keep the process going. A budget. Now, full disclosure, I hate budgeting. I do detest trying to track every receipt of what I'm spending. But I got to go ahead and tell you, budgeting is practice and getting you ready for the big game. Your big break, your big opportunity. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
And the more it becomes like muscle memory. It's like a golf swing. You've been managing finances for so long that you don't have to budget to know where your cash flow management plan is going. Once you've done it enough, it becomes second nature.
Yeah, I mean, you will get that 10,000 hours. Malcolm Gladwell, we were talking about biases, and, he has a great book out there on David versus Goliath.
Right.
He's also got Outliers, which talks about that 10,000 hour principle. You do get better at things if you just put the time in. And that leads to the next thing was that after you get through budgeting and graduate from that, you can have a better cash management system through forced scarcity. And what all forced scarcity is you create a plan of action for every dollar in your army of dollar bills, and the fact that they automatically just disappear. Like I have automatic forced savings, automatic forced things that get funding goals. It just happens. I've gotten so good at budgeting that I don't have to think about it because when all the stuff just goes out of the account, whatever's left over, I can spend however I want because I've already funded paying debt. I've given to the charities that I want to give to, and I've funded all the retirement and savings goals and the kids. It's all happening through that good practice of budgeting that led to a better cash management plan like forced scarcity. You'd put in here talking about crazy risk.
Yeah, I just thought that, if you're going to just do it, what that means is go take steps towards doing the things you need to do. What it doesn't mean is go out there and be irresponsible. Go out there and be negligent. Go out there and be a cowboy. So we just kind of snowballed some ideas that we think are just a little bit too risky. Maybe it's really risky investments. Maybe you think just do it. Hey, I want to go be wealthy. I'm going to go buy that crazy option strategy, or I'm going to start day trading penny stocks. Yeah. That might not be the thing that you just need to do. Maybe you're someone who's out there and you haven't done the basics like having wills and life insurance in place. You're focusing on all these things that you want to do and these things that you want to accomplish, but you haven't done the foundational stuff to make sure that you and your family are taken care of. Maybe you're someone who we've been in a really good economy for the last 10 years. The market's been kind. Maybe you're a little too lean on your cash reserves. Maybe one of the things is you just need to do it and get your cash in place where it needs to be. And then maybe you're someone who's just done a little too much and you've accumulated some debt. You have credit card debt or too much mortgage, or you have consumer debt. Whatever that is, that might not be what you need to be doing. That might not be, maybe just doing the right thing is just undoing some of the things that you've done previously.
So, I mean, we've covered a lot, and this is not the normal Money Guy episode. We are much more in the weeds. I mean, we got a CFA. We're both CFPs. I'm also a CPA. You've heard me tell the accounting stories. So we're analytical guys. So this touchy-feely stuff, but I felt like it was so important because I have recognized the older I get, this invisible hand of what your biases or things that are working against you, that inner voice, you got to have a plan of action. So that's why the sooner you can get, let's just quickly in summary, understand your biases, understand your blind spots. The sooner you know what makes you a weirdo or things that are limiting your beliefs, the sooner you can create accommodations. Is this going to be in a long drawn out story of success? Is this going to be, are your negatives just going to be that quirky facet that makes you kind of that inspirational story because you have some small weird things about you that you've overcome? Or is this going to be the thing that just destroys you and takes you down and doesn't let you reach your maximum potential? That's what we want you to do. Don't be a victim. Overcome these things. Control that inner voice. And then, by God, just do it. At the end of the day, just make something happen. That sounded like the nerdiest statement ever, didn't it?
I loved it.
But
I loved it.
I tell you, because I get so passionate about this, is because, guys, neither one of us come from legacy wealth.
That's right.
We come from pretty humble beginnings. Definitely Bo comes from super humble beginnings. There is an opportunity out there for you. And I love it. That's why I get so passionate about this, is because I've seen what we can do. You can do it too. So go out there. I feel like this is like my Tony Robbins.
Yeah, we're about to go
moment.
run through the
We're not going to go
barricade.
run through some coals of fire, but it is one of those things. I want you to go to moneyguy.com. I want you to give us your email address, your zip code, so when we take this thing on the road, we can talk to you. We can meet with you. And then don't forget what our day job is we're fee-only financial advisors, work with clients all over the country. If you love what we say, and maybe this is your first episode, this is not the normal episode, go check out the archives. Go check out what we got going on YouTube. Look at the other analytical stuff. I think you'll be hooked. And there's going to come a point where you're going to realize we'll continue to love on you. We'll grow you. I want you to apply. I want you to learn these concepts. There's going to come a point where you become so successful that you're going to say, I have an empire now. I need somebody to look over my shoulder and help me. That's when you're going to pay us forward and you're going to pay us back by going to aboundwealth.com or moneyguy.com, going to the contact us page and taking the relationship to the next level. What did we leave off, Bo?
I think you nailed it all.
So guys, what you don't know, when this show gets published, this will be our third show. Actually, fifth show if you take the Ask the Money Guy segments. We crushed it because we love doing this. This is what we were put on this planet for, and we thank you guys for just being a part of it. And starting this thing in 2006, it would have never happened without you guys emailing us, writing us, and letting us know that this was helping you, because this is not some corporate venture where it's got some big Fortune 500 company that's pushing us. This is all grassroots, you guys making it happen and helping us out. So thank you so much. I'm your host, Brian Preston. Mr. Bo Hansen. We'll be back soon.